Hello and welcome to a conversation and a studio visit with the artist Barry Expo. I'm Fergus McCaffrey, and I'm delighted that Barry's joining us today. The premise underlying the Art Basel 2020 online viewing room experience is new work. And we're very, very lucky today to have 6 new works by Barry that are based on the work of Madonnarosso. And the last 18 months have been a particularly fertile period for Barry, involving a solo exhibition at the Venice Biennale, an ongoing retrospective at the Nasher Sculpture Center in Dallas, which continues until January of next year. So there's plenty of time, hopefully, for everybody to see it. And we also had a solo presentation at TEFAF in Maastricht, which seems like 1,000 years ago in 2019, which was an unbelievable success and was the talk of that show. Underlying all of this, of course, is Barry's sculpture studio, which has really come into its own. And we're going to get insights into how special a place that is, and the new potential that he is able to find in stone and in stone sculpture. So it's going to be exciting to see that, and Barry's going to walk us through the different aspects of the process of making these incredible works. But I should say just a little bit about how Barry and I came together. And I remember very vividly seeing an exhibition of his sculptures at Salon 94 when they had a small space in Freeman's Alley, which must be about a decade ago. And the work just haunted me and stuck with me from that point. And it was a mutual friend of ours, Bob Nickus, the curator, who said, I want you to come and have a look at something. And he didn't tell me where we were going. We just hopped in a car and went over to Greenpoint. And lo and behold, we arrived at this magnificent studio, and I spent probably 4 hours with Barry, and I was astounded and inspired and deeply moved by what I encountered. And it's been an extraordinary rapid development of this relationship, and I couldn't be happier about it. It's a joy to be working with Barry. So before I start crying, I should hand it over to Barry, who's going to say a little something, and then we're going to roll some video. And if I can remind people, if you've got questions, submit them to the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So Barry, over to you.
Thank you, Fergus, and thank you, everybody around the world for joining in. I hope that I give you a little behind-the-scenes view of how my sculptures are made. I'm lucky right now to have the exhibition at the Nasher Sculpture Center in Dallas, which is, I believe, the only contemporary modern art museum dedicated to sculpture in the United States, in an incredible Renzo Piano building with fantastic light, natural and artificial. I have a retrospective of the last 25 years of my work, primarily in stone. Portrait sculptures, my masterpiece works, which are inspired by great historical works, and my new Madonnarosso project series. The rooms at the Nasher are just phenomenal, and those walls have never had a painting hung on them. It's an incredible backdrop for what I do, and I think my work has never looked better. It's an honor to have my work there with Jed Morse, the curator, and Jeremy Morse, the director, really being fantastic advocates of my work. Here we are at the new studio, a place that has taken me 9 years to make. And here is where the first body of work that I've created in the new space was germinated, the Madonnarosso project. Madonnarosso is now greatly appreciated, loved by artists especially, has come into his own as an artist. He was a late 19th, early 20th century Italian sculptor working primarily in Paris. I fell in love with his work and scanned 39 of them in the major collections in Italy, Galleria Arte Moderna in Milano, Ca' Pesaro in Venice, the Museum Madonnarosso in Barzio, private collections in Milano. Here's Madonnarosso himself working on one of his pieces, and this is the Madonnarosso Museum in Barzio. Baby at the soup kitchen, the scanning. You see images here of the Henri Rouard, a friend of his who was an artist and collector, that I've made works you see behind me inspired by. And here is my piece, Portrait of the Artist, realized in my favorite stone. It's my stone. It's wounded Mexican onyx from Baja, California. I know I'm the only person who working in this stone in the contemporary art world because I have to stage expeditions to the deserts far down the Baja Peninsula, industrial equipment, bringing back large boulders through Tijuana, San Diego, and then ultimately to New York. And it's an extraordinary material that asserts its materiality strongly. I work with it in dialogue with the forms that I'm trying to create. Here's another incredible stone, golden honeycomb calcite from the mountains of Utah, high up in the Rockies. Discovered in the mid-90s, phenomenally translucent. This is my work, The Veiled Woman, inspired by Rosso's Femme à la Voilette. In front of a window, you can almost see through it. Also paying homage to Madonnarosso's use of yellow wax. Well known for the translucence of his sculptures, although in his case, it's just a thin coating of wax on gesso. Here, the entire sculpture is made out of a translucent material. This is my baby at the soup kitchen, made again of the wounded Mexican onyx. A very particular piece with this Baroque, spectacular, very effusive red back, a veined front, almost purely abstract, referencing my earlier work with Chinese scholars' rocks. There are 3 new works that we have in our Art Basel presentation. This is Sacristan, based on Medardo's sculpture of the same name in Italian, Sagrestano, again in the Mexican Baja wounded onyx. Very translucent material, a bit bloody, wounded. This is Medardo's Carne Altrui, the flesh of others, a portrait of a prostitute in bed. My work inspired by that is Flesh of Others, the title, again realized in the Baja onyx. You can see here how translucent the stone is. It appears to glow. There's no actual lighting on the interior of these, but they appear to have inner light. Face of the prostitute, covered by a sheet. There's another work in our presentation, Sick Child. inspired by Ragazzo Malato, the same title in Italian, work by Rosso. He saw a young sick boy in the hospital when he was hospitalized in Paris. I've realized it here in translucent pink Iranian onyx. And here is my studio again with a collection of stone that I have been compiling for 25 years from Iran, Italy, Mexico, Brazil, Portugal, Vietnam. Here we are cutting on my Pellegrini calcite. Here I am with my robot collaborator and a new innovation where we can actually locate the figures that I'm trying to make inside a block of stone, utilizing an advanced anthropomorphic robot, formerly used by Tesla in this case, that's why it's red. Here's an architect's rendering of my new studio complex. Andrew Berman was the architect, did a fantastic job. Andrew also did work at PS1 and the Sculpture Center in New York. Here's the motley collection of buildings that existed on the site. I wanted to build a complete new comprehensive complex from scratch. Here we are at groundbreaking almost 9 years ago. Building in this part of Brooklyn is like building in Venice, Italy. Incredible pilings, 210 of them, 50 feet deep, massive concrete grade beams and foundations to be able to handle the industrial scale work that I have planned for the new studio. And here's the completed structure before we really moved in. No stone, not much art going on. You can see that I was inspired by modernist architecture to make a place that was clean and modern. You can see it located in the geography of New York with the Empire State Building in the background. And there's my palette, my collection of stone, brought from all of my repositories all over the world here. Formerly, I had some in Italy, some in Connecticut, some in Mexico, some in California. And it's extraordinary to have this material assembled here for me to work back and forth with the forms of the sculptures and the material. The material is critical, and I took my first trip to the stone yards of Tuscany along the coast there for 30 miles as arrayed stone from all over the world. This was about 25 years ago when I went there for the first time. Famous region for the local white marble, which you have right here in the photo. But I was struck by the fact that there is an incredible palette range, chromatic abundance, stacked in giant stone yards, hundreds of them in that region. And I was wondering, why hasn't the expressive possibilities of this extraordinary range of material been utilized? And it started what has been an obsession of mine now for 2.5 decades, is working back and forth from material to what I'm going to make of it. And the raison d'etre for this whole studio was to bring the making, the material, my team of people, advanced equipment, everything together in one place, all the aspects of making the sculpture, from the digital design of it to the physical realization, in one place, right in the heart of New York City. Kind of a crazy dream, but here we are 9 years later, and I am ready to run. The possibilities latent in that pile of stone right there are enormous, and coupled with the capabilities I have with my incredible team of sculptors that I've assembled, we're all excited about where this is going to lead. Going inside the main fabrication hall now. 20-ton bridge crane, both inside and outside, Pellegrini, computer-controlled robot wire saw. Here's a little sequence on making of my Pieta, inspired by Michelangelo's famous last work, the Pieta Rodanini in Castello Sforzesco in Milano, Italy. Here I am scanning the work, 3D scanning it with a state-of-the-art Breukman white light scanner. That's the start of my masterpiece series. Is first I collect the objective data. This is a rendering of what I wanted to make. Many subtle alterations to the Michelangelo form. And then when I've created the digital model, the first step is milling the stone, in this case, beautiful translucent white Iranian onyx, with a robot. And this goes on for weeks and months, moving really slowly, peeling away the stone. Then when it's finally milled, it comes to my studio in Brooklyn, and the details, the undercuts, the parts the robot couldn't reach are carved and refined. We treat every square inch, every square centimeter of the surface with jewel-like fastidiousness. I'm lucky to have this team that is willing to devote such concentrated effort over weeks and months to the realization of one of my works. A typical amount of time, hours, would be 8,000 to 10,000 person hours after all the digital and robot work to realize just one monumental scale piece. This is the pedestal of the Pieta, and here's the sculpture itself being milled by the robots, starting from the raw block, progressively finer cutters, months of work there by my collaborators in Carrara, Italy. You can see how slowly the machine moves across the surface. I often incorporate the path of the robot as a final surface of the work. In this case, I was trying to induce what Leonardo da Vinci called sfumato, a kind of smoky, out of focus, spiritual, ethereal quality to passages of this sculpture. And we did extensive tests with different sizes of cutters, different spacing between the various tool paths on the surface of the sculpture. Here it is ready to come to my studio in New York, and the handwork starts, caressing the surfaces. Moving glacially. Hina Kim, the capo of handwork in my studio, is working here on a second version of the Pieta. It's currently at the studio. If you came here today, this is live action video. I do a lot of looking, interacting with a team. I'm here every day. I even have a bedroom. I live and work at the studio. It's my dream to have this place, and I can't think of anything I'd rather do is make these works. There are multiple sculptures simultaneously going on. Here are the tests that I talked about with various, we call it step over spacing between those micro flutes that you see to determine the exact right surface quality. We are erecting the sculpture for the first time. It was a big day. It was the first work that we actually completed in the new studio. I was extremely lucky to have it shown at Castello Sforzesco, very near the Michelangelo that I had scanned many years before. It was a real honor. Now the team is working on a huge effort of the studio for this year. During the COVID shutdown period, we have been working on 2 versions of my St. Bartholomew Flame, inspired by Marco de Grate's San Bartolomeo Scorticato in the Duomo in Milano. It's realized from French Rouge du Roi, King's Red marble. Here's a 22-ton block being cut in Carrara. I'm laying out the profile of the sculpture on the block. I've done this for every one of my works, cut every block myself. And here we are working back and forth between Italy and New York. There's the robot, and you start to see the figures emerging. Again, this goes on for weeks and months. Sunny Italy, so they're working outside here. And this is another aspect of the creation of my works that is critical. Steve Gartoccio, my longtime collaborator, is refining the details of a cast of Madonnarosso's hand. The original is in plaster, and as you can see, we're utilizing state-of-the-art digital sculpting tools to crisp up details that were soft in the original Madonna sculpture, and to refine aspects of the work that didn't 3D scan well. Nathan, another extraordinary digital artist that I worked with. When the digital work is done, then it moves to the robot, and the hand is being carved here out of golden pink onyx with a really fine cutter, diameter of 1 millimeter, slowly working its way across the surface, millimeter by millimeter, programmed by my friend Konstantinos Papalexio, really a genius when it comes to cutting edge 3D milling. And then, as for all of my works, they comes to my studio, and Hina here is refining with dental tools the hand. And you see the white one to the left is a plastic 3D print, a 1-to-1 scale model that we have for many of the carving projects here. Exact references, we also have 100-page playbooks, paying attention to every little part of the sculpture, lavishing loving care on it. Even the bottoms are beautifully finished. The hardware that we put in it is jewel-like stainless steel. Here is a group of us working hard. This is in the run-up to the show of my Madonnarosso project that Fergus McCaffrey sponsored at Ca' Pesaro, the Museum of Modern Art in Venice, during the last Biennale. And here are photos of the finished work. Notice a slight buff on the fingernails. Now we're working on another Madonnarosso work over at the robot facility, which is very near to me here in Brooklyn. I'm back and forth many times a week. This work being laid out on screen is Baby at the Breast. One of the more abstract Rosso works, and this time I'm realizing it again in golden honeycomb calcite, a pan to Medardo's yellow waxes, but a whole other level of translucency beyond that wax. Difficult piece to make because there's no bottom to it. Holding it, fixturing it, took lots of calculating. To program in 7 axes like this is rare. Kostas there in the picture is obsessed with getting my works exactly like I want them. I owe him a great debt. Now my great assistant and master sculptor Masaki Takezawa is working on a version of Purity in the extraordinary translucent pink Iranian onyx. The gray little model is a 3D printed version that he's using for reference. And this is another version in translucent white Iranian onyx, kind of a golden white. You can see through the veil. They talk about the translucency of Carrara marble. The onyxes are many times more translucent, and I think a perfect accompanying stone to this figure, mysterious. Here's my sleeping hermaphrodite, which Fergus and I got a lot of attention for in Maastricht, realized by a rare, unique, large block in a block of translucent pink Iranian onyx. And this is the gallery at my studio with a selection of the Madonna works in a variety of stones, the Rosso works. This is an upcoming piece utilizing a natural crust of onyx from Iran. It's the continent of Africa. It's a secret new project. Gary, who's been with me for a long time, is master of many skills, and he's working on some of the pedestals for the Madonnarosso project. You can see that because the sculptures take a long time to make, sometimes multiple years, we have works in various states of completion going on at all times. The studio is active about 18 hours a day. The run up to the National Sculpture Show, maybe 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sometimes before social distancing was the norm, we would have up to 9 people on one major sculpture like the St. Bartholomew Flame in the background. My office looks out over this fabrication hall, over the pile of stones. It's truly inspiring. I wondered in the middle of the struggle to create this whether it was all worth it. All I can say is yes, those giant doors in the background, when they're open, and they have been often in recent days with the beautiful fall weather in New York, it just makes it an extraordinary place to work. And I wanted to make a place for my assistants that was inspiring, peaceful, light-filled, beautiful. I depend on them. They give their lives to my work, and I wanted to make a workplace that was exemplary for them. Here's our wood shop, and Ken, really extraordinary technician that works for me, storage, all the plaster cast that went towards my portrait sculptures, locker rooms and bathrooms with shower and a nice kitchen and a backyard where we have barbecues. We're a family working together. I even have residential facilities. Here we are in the hallway where visiting critics, curators, collaborators can stay. I crash here a lot, my library. And here we are in the penthouse looking over Manhattan in the background with the Veiled Woman. And here we are where I'm standing right now. You can see over my shoulder the portrait of the artist. And I hope to entertain any questions you have at this point.
Barry, thank you for that. Let's talk about the sculpture behind you first, because in terms of a ready-made, for example, you're dealing with a precursor in Madonnarosso's work, but this is so radically transformed in the material, and it looks so fragile, and it's a remarkable object to exist in the world, given the holes in it. And just talk some more about this for us, please.
Yeah, well, I'm able to with these stones, which would have been impossible with conventional carving techniques to use. Carrara marble is beautiful stuff. I don't mean to denigrate it. You can get a block as big as my studio and know that it'll be uniform from end to end. All the advanced technology that goes into making my work enables me to gently peel away stone, and chipping and carving with traditional mallets and chisels would just break this stuff into a pile of dust. And I wanted, in the tradition of my scholars' rocks, to always ask, why are you using stone? It's not a reflexive thing for me. I was not trained as a stone sculptor. If I'm going to utilize a material, it needs to both assert itself and form its own raison d'etre, its own rationale for being. If it doesn't become a critical aspect of what you visually see, to me, it's just a neutral kind of realization material. I knew when I chose the block for Portrait of the Artist that it was going to be risky. We purposely made this work in profile, and we could walk around the side of it very thin. And I knew that holes would pass through it. To me, actually, one of the marks of a successful sculpture is interaction with the air and the space around it. I was trying to maximize that. And actually present something that was pretty abstract in the Rosso model and push it as far as I can towards almost pure abstraction. A recent studio visitor saw the connection to my work and Chinese scholars' rocks, which were pure acts of connoisseurship, just selecting a stone from nature, recontextualizing it a la Duchamp with an industrial object. The Chinese took a natural object and completely changed the way we perceived it. And I would like that back and forth between, did I do anything to it? Is it just what it is? Me and what nature did, to be, constantly mixed in dialogue.
A related question from Elizabeth Bartman, and she asks, notwithstanding your use of advanced technologies, are there ever unexpected issues such as discolorations or flaws with the stone that affects the final image or causes you to abandon it?
At times, but in general, when you choose a quote problematic stone, you know you are, and you're going to be able to accept it or not as a whole. Little secret, we have ways of fixing things that are a problem in an otherwise uniform or perfect piece of stone. You have to be able to, again, working with these stones, use all kinds of tricks to get the sculpture to be completed, to have integrity as an object physically, to be able to realize it. But I have new works coming up where we'll actually combine multiple stones, but you won't know it. We'll be able to work with the flaws and reproduce them. And now you saw the visualization that we can do digitally of figures within the stone. It's a technology suite that I have that Michelangelo or Bernini would be all over. I'm a lucky guy to be living in the 21st century and have all this extraordinary technology brought to bear on the making of art, or be able to utilize it.
Some of the other stones that we saw in the stone yard, you've got green, what is it? It's green Pakistani onyx.
It's emerald onyx from Pakistan.
And then you had some sodalite or lapis lazuli.
Yeah.
Are they more or less difficult to work, or is it they all have their particular flaws?
Well, some of them are harder than others. With the technology that I utilize right now, we can't go all the way to semi-precious stones like jasper. They're too hard. Granite, I personally don't like. I think it's a pretty ugly stone. It has no translucence, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Yeah, but they all radically affect the figure. I have done versions of purity in everything from lapis lazuli to jet black, Belgian black marble to wildly veined Portoro marble to soft, translucent pink Iranian onyx, and it radically affects the sculpture. It's a completely new sculpture. I love seeing them realized in a variety of stones. So yeah, they're different, but more or less the working process is the same with some modification for hardness and so on. So.
Another question for you. So in terms of the amount of sculpture you're able to make over the course of a year, in the old studio you were making maybe 4 or 5 sculptures, and now what is the capacity?
Well, yeah, my lifetime average, I think, years working as a professional artist divided into total number of sculptures puts my output around 5 pieces a year. I've always, even when my work in a different form, adopted these incredibly repetitive, obsessive working methods, people thinking that that was something I was interested in, is some kind of Zen-like religious obsessiveness. No, I'm interested in results, and we just do whatever it takes. And I believe that those thousands of small details that we pay attention to cumulatively give my sculptures a buzz. We want them to be an object like no other you see in the world in your lives. I want that, oh golly gee, drop your drawers, stunning presence to my work, and it takes a long time. Yes, the new studio, we should be able to make more. I think in 2020, we've worked through the COVID shutdown. We might have 12 works that say 2020 as their date. I built the place mainly to go new places with each individual work, not as a factory for extra production. But yeah, I brought more people on staff, and we are working on more simultaneously. It's a really great creative time with the studio.
You've got that incredible sculpture of the skin-only version of St. Bartholomew, which I'm sure they're working on right outside where you are right now. When are we going to get to see that finished? Because at the gallery, we've been looking at this thing and just, it's such a revolutionary sculpture and it's so dramatic. When do you think we're going to be able to share this with the public?
We're hoping the end of October or by mid-November. It's already gone on here for the entire shutdown period. After all of our prior work on it arrived for this final handwork about January.
Okay.
So right now I'm looking right over the computer screen and see 4 people full-time on it. Another crew comes in and works in the evening. Gary starts early, gets a little crowded around the sculpture, so he likes the piece of working by himself on it. But yeah, we're anxious too. But at this point, we've gone through so much. We want to take it to the finish line at the highest level of any work we've ever made. So it's no wine before it's time, no sculpture before it's done.
All right. Well, you know, another question. So Craig Watson asks, he's curious about your thinking of the steel pedestals for the smaller sculptures. They very much have a quality unto themselves. Do you care to comment about how you arrived at that?
Yeah, I've always thought about all aspects of my work, how it's presented in the world, how it's lit, Pedestals have all been made by me. I don't just make an object and assume somebody's going to figure out a way to display it. There's a tradition of artists obsessing about that. Greatest example is usually Brancusi, where his pedestals were integral to the object that they displayed. Yeah, the rectangular sheetrock chipboard box has become the coin of the realm in the art world. From the Metropolitan Museum to the Louvre, you'll see it. And I always think, well, they just didn't want to deal with it. But in that case, they were curators after the fact. I'm an artist living now, thinking of something that presents the stone sculpture in the best possible way and also works with it. These pedestals for the Madonnarosso project were inspired by Norman Foster's Nomos tables. I originally was thinking of classic artist tabourets when looking at images of Madonna working in his studio. Classic artist sculpture stands with displayed legs. And then I thought of something airy. I actually explored trying to get sculptures to levitate with a guy working with magnets. It's been an issue that the minimalists dealt with. They basically plopped their sculptures on the ground. They didn't want pedestals. The pedestals kind of been an obsession for the 20th century. Now I'm going to make a custom-made pedestal for each one, playing around, emphasizing aspects of the sculpture, giving a central thrust, making it float, making the truss, the diagonal truss at the lower reaches of the sculpture echo the diagonal structure of the sculpture above, etc.
I love the way that the sculpture almost flows off the edge of the pedestal, like some Dali-esque, or like liquid lava or something like that. It's a fabulous thing. I've seen it many times in the flesh, and it's one of the greatest things that I've seen recently.
Thank you. Thank you. We're really happy. It's a magical piece. I mean, we knew we were taking a risk, but to see it actually come to be when it was on the robot was pretty phenomenal experience. That's why, you know, a lot of pain building a studio and everything we do. That's why we do it, is for experiences like that, to be able to make a work like this.
Well, we're coming up on 45 minutes now. So Barry, thank you for your time, and thanks for opening the studio to us today. And thank you for your questions, everybody. And enjoy the 6 sculptures. And I hope that we'll get an opportunity to show them to you in the flesh very soon. So thank you, everybody, and have a good afternoon. And wherever you are in the world, have a good morning or good night. Take care.